Hello again to another episode of Science Fiction Remnant. How you guys doing today?
Pretty good. We've been having a good old laugh in the pre-stream.
Yep.
Yeah, we
I, I think that we did another show in the pre-stream. We just didn't record it.
Thankfully,
so for this episode, we're going to talk about part 2 to 13 going on 30.
was I supposed to watch that? Actually, I think I've seen it like decades ago. But I don't remember much.
Yeah.
No, we're doing the Atom Project, which if you take away the names, you could say is part 2, but it's technically not part 2 for to this movie. The actors are the same, so let's move on to our first segment.
Define science fiction remnant.
And for this segment, if you guys are aware of this by listening to our show, this is the show the segment of the show that would get you on our episodes. So all you have to do is go on Twitter and just define us to someone that loves sci-fi, that you think might appreciate what we do and what our show stands for.
And
Um,
depending on how things go, you'll get a ticket to Fluster Paradise.
so yeah, so I for this episode I have one of the comments that was on our um, Apple Podcasts as uh, it's a review of our show that I think it kind of it called my attention. So if you guys want to do it that way, also you can also go into any podcaster of your choice, and you can leave a review and just let us know, and you could be on future episodes. So this one comes from Nick EE89, and he says, "Really glad I found this podcast. The hosts cover all kinds of science fiction, especially films. They have great chemistry and good audio quality. I love this episode on Ad Astra. Subscribed." So, what do you guys think about that one? It really called my attention. It makes me feel good that we have people that enjoy the same things that we do.
Good audio quality. They didn't catch it. They never know what they hit it. No, that was a. Where did it go? Where Ray go? Ray. But no, I like that. That's the whole point about it, is to make people feel welcome on our conversation. I mean, that's been the whole point from the beginning of this project, is to make them feel like they're here sitting on the couch with us. Even though if they will really be doing that, they'll be annoyed, because I always like to be like rubbing myself on other people when I'm sitting on the couch with them.
So consider yourself lucky, Ray.
I just had some connection issues actually, so I missed about the last minute of what was going on. But I'm back now.
That's okay. I don't know if you had any comments or if you heard the comment that I read. If you have any comments about that. If not, we can move on to the next.
Probably best to move on because I missed it.
That's all right. That's all right.
The internet. What a wonderful thing it is.
Oh, yes. So moving along, our next segment. We are Science Fiction Remnant.
This is the Funny Science Fiction Podcast.
We are the Caribbean Science Fiction Network.
We are Monorats.
We are One Accord Level 2 Podcast.
This is Jesse from Sudden But Inevitable and Open Pike Night.
This is sci-fi.
And in this section, we basically just kind of come through this, and this is sci-fi hashtag, and kind of point out things that kind of call our attention. I'm going to go first. If you guys have anything in particular you want to point out, feel free. The one that I'm going to point out is coming from Angelus. He says, and thank you, Angelus. You're always interacting. What he mentioned here is uh, key point of being or talking about something they enjoy. That's the key. People ignore naysayers. Just focus on what you love to do and do it. And that is so on point. Thank you so much for that comment. What do you guys think about that?
I mean, when you made the pause, when he said people, I was gonna think that he was gonna mean not animals, because I can be an animal sometimes. No, I think it's a great way to put it. And I mean, I always enjoy my interactions with Angelus whenever I also go to Radio Chaos. So thank you so much for those kind words.
Thank you.
Yeah, basically, he's reiterating a core tenet of the Elite Army, the fandom for the movie Elite Battle Angel, that work on being the most positive fandom on the internet. And yeah, basically, just ignore the naysayers, don't get involved with them, and do what you love. Then you'll be a happy person too.
And
You can
I
tell
think
you can
that
tell them talk to
like
the hand.
just like Giancarlo said, this is the core of what we do, and the reason why we choose a property to record. Um, we try to focus on the positive and do what we love doing, which is talking about sci-fi properties. What do you think, Giancarlo? I mean, you just kind of briefly spoke about that just a few minutes ago.
I mean, I majorly like talking a lot of crap, but I like to like just dive into topics and I really just have an innate interest in things that are interconnected in some way with what reality could be or is at the moment, you know? And that's the essence of science fiction, you know? Is that there are many things that already are, and then you look at all movies and they're not that much science fiction anymore, really.
Yeah.
So that's why I like science fiction so more.
You guys had any interactions that you want to call out? I don't know if you were like in that hashtag as I am like almost every day, but if you want to call something out before we move on to the next segment.
My
Okay.
Oh, I,
last one was with Radio Chaos, and I think that they're not gonna invite me again because I'm terrible. Just
you're
kidding.
not terrible. Come on.
Okay, so let's move on to the next segment.
Shout out.
So for this part of the show, for the shoutouts, I want to make a special thank you to Rachel KB, capital K, capital B, for actually mentioning us and retweeting about our show to other people. Also, Best Film Ever podcast did the same thing. They retweeted our show and also spread the voice about our show. And Film Rage for always participating with us in our conversations and comments and all the questions that we make. I'm gonna take this little part of the shout outs to advise, even though it's gonna be late by now, that we're gonna have a poll for everybody to participate.
Okay, and I want to add to the shout outs. Cinema Recall, for always being there. I mean, they're always they're part of the same network we are. So I appreciate their support. Um, and Jealous, we just spoke about him. He's very very involved, and we thank you for that. Being involved with us and keeping the conversation going. You know. Um, Anything else? I don't know if Ray has any other, or we can
Oh,
move on
I
to
was
the.
just going to say that when we get around to covering Cyberpunk 2077, the computer game will have to drag his ass in here because he's mad keen on that one. So
Awesome, awesome. Okay, so we're gonna go on to the next segment.
The Outer Remnant.
Okay, and for the Outer Remnant, just want to point out for all of you who would like to get a little more about us, this is where we announce where we have been so far. We got Ray last Radio Chaos episode 110. I don't know if you want to speak a little bit more about what that episode was about and where they can go find it.
Yeah, sure. So this particular episode, the subject was what is life like in Zalem. Hopefully, you've seen Alita Battle Angel because we've been spruiking it a lot on this channel, and obviously the Alita Army spruiks it every day in every way that we can because we're fighting for a sequel. But this particular episode, we were discussing what life is like in Zalem. Obviously, the floating city is quite mysterious in that the focus of the movie is on Iron City, which is on the ground, and basically the people in Iron City aren't allowed to know what's going on up there. So the question is, what is life like up there? And we were discussing that both in the movie and in the manga, which is the source material. So that was a lot of fun, and you can check that out by going to the hashtag Alita Army, one word, all squashed together, channel on YouTube, and that was the latest episode. Obviously, this podcast will be dropping some months after that particular episode, but you can go back to 110 and check that out, and check out all the ones in between.
Awesome. Okay, so with all that out of the way, let's jump into our main subject. We're talking about the movie. It's a Netflix original called The Adam Project. And it's basically about, in a single sentence, and I'll let Ray talk a little more about the plot. Is after an accidental crash landing in 2022, time traveling fighter pilot Adam Reed teams up with a 12-year-old self for a mission to save the future. Um, it was a fun movie. I don't know if you guys agree, but it was light sci-fi.
Popcorn
I mean,
sci-fi.
light science, but it was a lot of fun to watch. Ray, you want to go ahead and you have the plot
Of
ready?
course, I'm organised. Well, we chatted for over an hour before we got started on this. So, I mean, I've had plenty of time to open the pages. But this was an enjoyable movie. I quite enjoyed it. Budget of 116 million. So, they weren't being cheap about it. That's quite a bit of money for Netflix, I think. So it was directed by Sean Levy. Starring Ryan Reynolds, Walker Scobell, Mark Ruffalo, Jennifer Garner, Catherine Kenner, and Zoe Saldana. So good cast, good actors. I've enjoyed them on a lot of other shows. So its release date was March 11, 2022. So it's a pretty new one, at least when we're recording this. By the time it comes out, it'll be a few months down the line. But you can catch it on Netflix worldwide. And the plot is in a dystopian 2050, fighter pilot Adam Reed steals a time jet and escapes through time on a rescue mission to 2018. However, he accidentally crash lands in 2022 instead, where Adam meets his 12-year-old self who is struggling with the recent death of his father, Lewis, in a car accident. He's bullied by Ray and Chuck, has been suspended from school a third time for fighting, and has been distanced from his mother. Adam reluctantly enlists his younger self to help repair his jet and reveals that he's looking for his wife, Laura, who was supposedly killed in a crash while on a mission in 2018. The older Adam is being chased by Maya Saurian, the leader of Dystopian World, and her lieutenant Christos, who attempt to apprehend him and take him back to 2050. The Adams are rescued by Laura, who reveals that she has escaped an assassination attempt on her and was left stranded in the past. Laura has learned that Saurian has traveled back in time and altered the past in order to give herself control over time travel and the future. Laura urges the older Adam to travel back to 2018 and destroy time travel, which was created by his father Lewis, in order to set things right and save the future. Saurian attacks and Laura sacrifices herself so that the two Adams can escape. That is 12-year-old Adam and adult Adam. Chased by Saurian and with only enough power left for one jump, Adam and his younger self jump back to 2018. In 2018, the two Adams attempt to enlist Lewis's help, that's their father, but he refuses out of concern for the scientific impact on the time stream. The younger Adam confronts his future self about his bitterness and anger and realizes that the source of his lingering pain was over his father's death. As the two launch an attack to destroy Lewis's particle accelerator, Lewis changes his mind and joins the mission, having them instead retrieve the hard drive containing the only copy of his algorithm that enables time travel. A battle erupts between the Atoms, Lewis, Saurian, and her younger self, Saurian's soldier and Christos. God, that's that's confusing. Resulting in the particle accelerator overloading. Saurian attempts to shoot Lewis with an armor-piercing bullet, but the magnetic field of the accelerator instead diverts the round, causing it to kill the younger Saurian, erasing the future Saurian from existence as the Reeds flee. Another confusing
Karma.
With time travel destroyed and the future set right, Lewis chooses not to learn his own fate and enjoys a game of catch with both versions of his son before the Atoms are returned to their own times. In 2022, the younger Adam, now living in a timeline where his suspension never happened, decides to let go of his anger and repair his relationship with his mother, hugging her before going to school. Years later, an older and much happier Adam meets Laura for the first time in a situation mirroring their first meeting in the original timeline. The end.
Nice. I would have to say this movie, and I don't know if you guys agree with this, but this movie was a lot of fun to watch.
It was.
Um,
And actually, watching the movie rather than listening to that plot synopsis is a lot less confusing because multiple instances of the same person at different ages can get a little bit confusing for the old noggin.
yeah, the time travel.
I mean, what have you watched with Ryan Reynolds that is not fun?
Got a point.
Yeah, I even like the Green Lantern.
I even like his commercial of the gin that he makes himself.
Oh, that was funny.
Yes. So it's kind of funny because I saw an interview where they were asking Ryan Reynolds, based on this movie, if he can go back and by the way, when this episode hits, it's going to be, if you happen to listen to our podcast in Spotify, you'll see there's going to be a question on there, and that's basically the question that I'm asking all the listeners, so you can go ahead and reply. Unfortunately, I can only do it in Spotify. So if you don't listen to Spotify, if you don't answer, you can go ahead and reach out to Twitter, to us via Twitter, and we'll get it just the same. But the question that I'm going to ask everybody is the same question that was asked to Ryan Reynolds on I guess the gala when when the movie premiered, and it's like, if time travel was possible, and you could go back and tell yourself something, your younger self, that maybe would benefit you, um, in the future, or maybe erase the mistake or whatever it might be. What
Give you an almanac for future events.
what would that be? Like, what advice could you get your younger self? And you can actually find this interview in YouTube. But he basically says something that I kind of believe, and actually quoted myself saying in previous episodes. You know how we are the results of what we have gone through. So he said he's not gonna tell his younger self anything, because he needs to experience um, what he experienced to become the person that he is now. However, being the Ryan Reynolds that he is, he did say, "Well, I'm going to fuck him up a little bit. I'm going to tell them, oh boy, you're going to go through hell, and get ready, man. Just tie your shoes, or
I identify with him.
you're gonna be fucked up for the rest of your life."
I probably would hold myself like my shoulders, to look face to face, and say, "You're gonna get fucked by life. Just go all in."
You might as well run now, because
Bend over, grab your ankles, and kiss your ass goodbye.
so that I just bust out laughing when he says something like that. He's like, he kind of said that something like that would actually make him a better person, scare him about life, so then he can do a little bit, like uh, better, if you want to say, or stronger.
Now, what would
Um,
you say if you have just one word to tell to yourself?
Me,
Yeah.
I don't know. That's very hard because I strongly believe that I am the person who I am now because of what I've gone through. So I am my fear is that I would say something as minuscule as could be that would
It's one
actually
word. It's one
change.
word. One word.
I would not. I'd be afraid to even open my mouth because I don't want to
I
change anything about what I would become.
I'd need a short sentence.
Go ahead.
Something like it's okay to fail.
Yeah.
Just tell my young self, look, fuck things up. It's okay.
I
You
want
spend
you
so
to
much
go
time.
and find me in the past and tell me that I'm gonna be actually a champion on that.
But I agree with that. I mean, you need to fail, and you need to fail often.
Well, you know what they say about winners. Winners are just losers that never give up.
Exactly.
Exactly. I mean, it's one of the hardest things to learn is don't fear failure. Embrace it and keep failing until you succeed. It's not a case of you've got to succeed or don't try, which is what a
Yeah.
lot of kids these days think. I won't try because I'll fuck it up. It's
There's
go and fuck it up until you succeed.
exactly. There's a saying that says, don't let your failures go to your heart, and don't let your failures go to your heart, and don't let your success get to your head.
Yeah,
That's a good one.
that's a
And
good
that's a
one.
very good saying that I like very much.
So, in this episode, I think we're going to go back to our roots. And why I'm saying this is because we are going to go all over this movie in no particular order. I am determined to make this episode in this manner. So so if you notice this, if you listen to season 1, then you know where I'm coming from. That's
Oh
what we
yeah.
do. So there's one thing that I wanted to ask you guys that came to my head when I was watching this movie. There is a scene where the Adam and actually Adam's wife was sending him away on um,
Laura.
Laura. They were on the cabin, and the bad guys are on their way, and she's sending him away, saying that he has to go back to 2018 and he has to stop time travel from ever existing. And he he's reluctant because he lost her once, and now he found out that she wasn't really dead. Um, so he didn't want to do it, and she forced him. He said, um, there's always going to be echoes. After time travel, after there's an alteration on a timeline, um, you are going to find me. And then we fast forward to the end of the movie where he says, "I found you," and you can see in her face the echoes of what she was saying on halfway through the movie. The reason why I'm saying this is I'm going to go a little bit in stretch the I don't know if you want to call it science. I don't if you can call it science of time travel. And when I was watching that scene, something popped into my head is if time travel changes could produce echoes on the individuals involved, would they manifest as deja vus? Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, consciousness is one of those things that's very malleable. I've noticed myself. I don't do hard drugs or anything like that. I dabbled when I was younger in a few things, but nothing major. But just the whole concept of mind altering substances, your consciousness changes, and the way you perceive things changes. It hits me being a type 1 diabetic when my blood sugar goes really low. My brain doesn't get enough glucose, and your thinking and your cognition, and you know your understanding of the speed of time and what's going on, and how you're interpreting your reality changes because your brain changes. And the concept of echoes, with and deja vu, it's all sort of intermingled with that. You're not quite perceiving things the way you think you are, or your brain's doing things in a different way. So it's all very dependent on how your brain's functioning on the day, and what you're picking up. I've had deja vu before. Like, I've dreamed things, and then I'm sitting there and it's happening. I'm going, I've seen this before. I've dreamt about this. And there was one time that was so obvious. I was sitting there in a conversation, and I went, I've seen this before. I've dreamt about it. The next thing I'm going to say is this. I'm going to try and stop myself from saying it. Before I could stop myself from saying it, I said it. I was
Yes,
like, damn,
that had happened.
I couldn't stop it.
That
That's
had happened to
really
me
weird.
too. I wonder because I mean, for all of you listeners, and I have a conversation with a couple of you guys where you don't quite believe as I do, and I'm not sure if Giancarlos or Ray will agree, and you guys will let me know. But I am a strong believer on the multiverse. So I feel, and only because I've been watching and reading about it from some of the uh, scientists that have been talking about through YouTube, or they have some articles written, and I find the idea very fascinating. But I believe that in this particular case, for example, just so I can use this as a way to explain it, the timeline where Laura, the wife,
Mhm.
dies has happened and is there. It hasn't changed. It's just a fork. And the other timeline where they meet in school for the first time, where time travel is not possible, exist. So I feel because of and again, I'm stretching this, and you guys let me know what you guys think. Because of quantum entanglement, there's always going to be those echoes in between every single plane of reality. That's just, I don't know. I'm stretching it in my head, and it sounds like it makes sense. Um, I don't know. Maybe let me start with Giancarlo's.
Well, I'm gonna use a very non-scientific analogy, something more um, psychological about it. But imagine that time is, well, imagine no, time is considered a fabric by science itself. Imagine that that fabric is the surface of a calm water. Whatever you do on that is gonna create a ripple effect that is gonna expand, and there is nothing that is gonna stop that wave from continuing to expand and clash with whatever else is happening on this giant fabric. So I think it works the same way. It's what they call the butterfly effect, you know.
Okay. Okay.
So
Um,
that's the way I see it. So yeah, I think that at the end of the day, it would have ripple effects, and it's gonna have uh, changes that are gonna manifest one way or another on your present self in different realities.
I and I like to hear from. I don't know if Ray has any opinion on this one, but I know that I'm stretching, and I know that I talked to some of you listeners, and you guys do not. Well, half of you agree, and half of you don't agree. So let's hear Ray on this topic.
Well, yeah. I was just thinking to myself while you were talking about that was, oh, you're going to like my new novel series that I'm working on, which is basically got to do with alternate realities existing side by side. So I haven't written very much yet, but look out for that one. But yeah, because I'm writing something about alternate realities at the moment, I've been thinking about these sorts of ideas, and quantum entanglement's a really interesting scientific principle that they know exists. Of course, on the quantum level, things don't work the same as in the physical level that we recognize and understand. It's got its own whole bunch of laws and things that it moves by, which doesn't seem to make sense to physics as it exists for larger objects and situations like ourselves. But on the quantum level, there's all sorts of connections and things going on that we're only just starting to unravel. So it's quite possible that eventually we will discover that yes, every decision that's made creates a new reality, and the path not taken is another reality that exists out there somewhere, in what is being called the multiverse, and there may be some connection to it through quantum entanglement. Anything like that is possible. You can't discount anything until you've explored it and seen that it either exists or it doesn't exist. The whole concept of science is it's oftentimes not possible to prove that something exists. It's only you're unable to disprove it. And a lot of scientific knowledge that we have at the moment is not actually known 100% hard facts. It's, well, at the moment with our technology and understanding, we cannot disprove this. So we're going to accept it until we can disprove it. Like the perfect example is when my father went to school, the smallest particle of matter was the atom. That was what was taught in schools. The atom was the smallest particle of matter. Obviously, we know now that there's subatomic particles and all sorts of other strangeness going on down there in that realm. And but at the time they didn't know that, so they said atoms are the smallest thing. And then 10 years later, they split the atom, and at the end of World War II. So science is science as we know it now. It won't stay the same. We'll either find new things or disprove things that we believed. And that's a beautiful thing about science. It's ever changing. It doesn't get boring because nothing's fixed. We have an understanding at a point in time, and then at a future point in time, that understanding will change, and that's fine because that's the way knowledge works.
Yeah, I strongly agree with that. I mean,
Sounds about right.
even conversations or disagreements on current theories. Look at, for example, string theory versus the quantum theory. That is um, half of scientific body. Let me just say that because I don't have a concrete percentage, but half of them is uh, towards the string theory, and the other one is towards the quantum theory, and they argue to each other that the other one is wrong. So that is actually science at work, because there's a group that believes this until it's proven wrong, and they're both discovering, okay, this part is wrong, but this part, so that they still haven't proven each other wrong. Basically, that's what I'm trying to say. I mean, what do you say, Ray? I don't know if you heard about this one over here. I've been reading a lot about it.
Well, the beautiful thing about humanity is that it can think beyond what it can see. We the whole fact that there is such a thing as science fiction is proof positive of that we can think beyond what exists now, and being able to do that. For one, as I've said many times in this podcast, that science fiction shapes science fact, because you have an idea of what could be, and then you make it happen because it looks cool. The rule of cool does apply in science, like big time. And then, of course, when you get into physics is one of those fields that's pretty damn amazing. I can't admit to understanding it in any great detail because I studied biology and chemistry. I didn't actually study physics, but I recognize and respect physics in that it's an amazing field which has so much more depth to it than we currently understand. And the beautiful thing is that you people come up with a theory. The whole basis of science is something's happening. How does it work? Here's the theory. I think this is how it works. I'm going to test that. Now, because a lot of these things in physics are so out there that we currently have no way to test it. So that's why you have these two groups of thought arguing about what one's right. And you can look at both of them and go, okay, this one's got this, and this that we can see now. And this one's got this, and this that we can see now. Both of them have a basis, but they're incomplete. They're an incomplete understanding, and that's why they're arguing about it. They're thinking through it. Science is trying to work itself out basically through humanity. And the beautiful thing is that they might both be wrong. There might be a third thing. Like it might be all based on magic. Who knows? But the whole thing is that science is not fixed. It's not a this is how it is. It's a this is how we understand it today. Tomorrow it'll be different.
It is not absolute.
That's what's so fun about it.
Exactly.
Yeah. If it was absolute, you could learn it and then it'd get boring.
And the good thing is
It will
there's
be
something.
stagnant.
Yeah,
Exactly.
there's something that resounded in my head that was said by Degrassi Tyson.
Oh, nice.
Well, he said that what we're talking about could have been a complete different story if we know the right questions to ask.
Mm.
And that stayed with me when he said that. It's just kind of like my mind just blew.
You know who said that as well? Douglas Adams.
Ooh.
I remember you guys did a pod on Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the movie.
Yes.
But we've talked about movies only scratching the surface of the source material, and the source material for Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is obviously the 5-book, or it might even be 6 books, trilogy that Douglas Adams actually covered it in like book 2, I think it was, which is when Deep Thought was asked, what is the meaning of life, the universe, and everything? And the answer was 42. And like they got the answer and they went, well, what does that mean? And it's like, well, to understand the answer, you have to understand the question you're asking.
Yes.
And then they spent millions of years trying to work out what that question actually meant. And that's the whole thing of, well, the question you're asking is almost more important than the answer you get.
It's just, to me, it's just mind-boggling.
Asking the right question.
Yeah,
if you don't ask the right question, you're not gonna get the answer that you're looking for.
Exactly.
But even understanding the question you're asking.
Yeah, understanding. It's like, we have, like Ray said, we have, something happens. We want to know, how does that work? And then the next question is like, okay, I think it's this way. And then let's test that. What if it is thought to be the other way, or maybe the understanding is completely different? We might eventually, and I don't know if I'm even explaining it right, because it's just, I'm still processing, but depending on that question, we can get the right answer and get to the right conclusion to the problem that we're pondering. So,
but to understand the conclusion, you've got to understand the question. A lot of times people ask a question and they don't quite understand what they're asking.
Exactly. So yeah, I don't know. It was just something that it's just came to me when this movie, for some reason, and it's not like this movie has hard science. It's a very easy movie to watch. It's a very fun movie to watch, funny movie to watch. But you know me, I will stretch wherever you don't need to stretch. By the way, what do you guys think about the wormholes depicted in this movie? I think they were really cool.
Oh yeah.
I've never met a wormhole I didn't like.
Considering we never seen one before in real life, but still. And I had to say that because I know people, some of my audience might call me out on that. Yeah, we haven't seen a wormhole, but still, based on what we understand that to be, I found them in this movie to be really cool.
But this is what I see. I kind of have similarity to every other science fiction property that I've watched. Doesn't matter if it's an anime, a movie, or a TV series, that it has a similarity of how a wormhole is imagined to look like.
Well, here's why, and let me explain why I'm saying that I really like this one. I've seen a lot of wormholes depicted in different properties, but not that many depicted in the way that it was depicted in this movie. It might be because of Interstellar, right? Because this movie is obviously after. Um, and it might be also because of the discovery of the black hole. The picture that's floating around. If you guys have TikTok, if you listen to my TikTok, you're probably seeing me. Um, I was teaching a discussion, a professor in a university. They were describing the photo, the first photo of a black hole, and how it compares to the image that we see in Interstellar. The reason why I'm saying very few ones are depicted in this manner is because you could kind of see how, and again, black holes and wormholes are completely different. I just want to point that out. They're very similar properties, but not the same. But what I'm trying to say is, if you look at that image that is depicted in this movie, very similar to the one they kind of try to depict it in Interstellar, it actually folds light in a particular way. So when you look at, if you pay close attention in the movie, you see how the light is bent on the walls of the wormhole as he's entering through it. And I know it's very minimal. I know it's very, maybe there's not much, screen time for this thing. And maybe I am a huge geek, but I just found that to be really cool because I seen other black or not wormholes, and I can count very few of them being depicted in this way. Do you guys notice that too, or is it just me?
I did notice it. I did notice it.
No, it was a good little detail. I mean, they didn't skimp on the special effects and the set design in this movie. It really was quite impressive. It was fully immersive. I was quite convinced by it.
Awesome. Is there, I spoke about that, a couple of moments in this movie. Do you guys have a particular movie that really kind of, I mean, a particular spot in this movie that kind of called your attention? And I know the movie, it's a Ryan Reynolds movie. It's fun. But, is there any particular spot in this movie that kind of brought your attention in a particular way?
Well, I thought
I love how he coach himself as an adult, being a kid in his future. I love it. That's what caught me off.
It is so much fun.
I particularly liked the opening. It was an attention grabber, and the music that they played, the music. So I don't know. I was always a fan of those sort of happy boppy sort of music over action scenes that pop up in movies every now and again. It's total popcorn. It's like shoving the popcorn in your mouth. Going, yeah, this is great.
I got Guardians of the Galaxy vibes.
Oh, for sure. Well, so Solander's in this. So yeah, as soon as you see her, it's like.
I mean, the music and everything. Yeah.
But I got to say, Ryan Reynolds movies are always fun, but I was actually a little bit surprised at the depth of the acting between Ryan and Zoe when they were having to part, and like he knows that she's going to die saving himself twice so he can get away, and it was quite it was certainly believable enough to be heart-wrenching.
Yes.
So I think that this movie succeeds on an emotional level, if perhaps not quite on a scientific level. We'll get to that. Yeah, I mean, it's certainly an enjoyable movie on quite a number of levels. They did a pretty good job.
Awesome. I had another question when I was watching this movie. They talked about something which by the way, when they first talked about it was kind of really funny. The younger Adam was asking his older Adam a question when they were inside the ship, where he says, do you remember this right now? Right this moment, do you remember? And he's like thinking, okay, I know where you're going with this, but he's not letting him finish. or talk. It's like, come on, you got to. So basically, he says you're watching too much science fiction movies, or
And
something
he
of that
said, and
nature.
he said like, stop trying to ask me. I told you it's qualified already. Or like it's
No, the scene that I'm talking about, he's telling him, you're watching too much TV or something like that.
yeah, yeah.
And he says, um, right now, I'm not going to remember. But when I go back to my times, where I belong from, then all the timelines would reconciliate. And, well, I don't,
Reconcile.
well, they're going to settled basically where they
Yes,
belong. And then he'll remember. But
because
at
they're
the moment,
exactly, and that's to me that links up to the analogy I was explaining earlier about that ripple effect. That wave has not reached that meeting point with another branching out reality. Still, you know.
I, I was I was wondering about that too. Um, it's I don't know if Ray wants me to talk about this right now, but it just bugs me because it seems like there are inconsistencies
It
throughout.
was a bit of narrative hand waving to get over the whole time paradox issue.
I don't think that they put much real science into it. That's the truth.
No, and
And I'm not scientific to judge about that, but I don't think that there was real hard science on how time traveling and its effects on it
well,
happen.
as a as a theory, it could make sense if it was, you know, s- let me call it stabled throughout the movie. Um, and
Eh,
the reason why I'm bringing this up is because,
standard is a better word.
well,
They literally picked the grandfather theory and they stuck to it like that, plain and simple.
but throughout the movie they kind of change. It's kind of like they say something and they do something else.
That's what people do.
So what I was going to ask is, like, if this would be, for example, for the rest of the movie, a standard, if this would be the concept that the whole movie was based on and nothing else was the opposite, like it is right now, because right now you have scenes that are opposite to what they just said. I just wanted to gauge your opinion on that. Let's say for a moment that this is a fact throughout the entire movie. Do you Can you consider it believable, the fact that, you know while you're in time traveling, you're not going to get that effect where you remember things until you go back to your own time and everything settles? Not sure if I want to. Should I start? Let me start with Ray because I'm really curious about. I'm sure I'm going to get shut down here, but
How many times can you put me on the spot in one episode? I should be marking these down.
well, I don't know. I'm just very curious because it it kind of makes sense in a weird way, and I don't, and I'm kind of curious to see what you guys thought, or maybe I'm just overthinking this way too much.
Oh, that's what scientists do. They overthink things. It's how it works. You can't come up with competing theories if you stop as soon as you come up with the first theory.
Yeah, yeah.
I think it works like this. Okay, we're done here.
Done, done. Mic drop.
Yeah. I mean, I think Back to the Future probably gave it a better spin. You remember in Back to the Future Part 2 when
Mhm.
Marty comes back and things are different?
And I have
Um,
my very own opinion of that. I think he never came back to his time. He's in an alternate reality on the
exactly.
multiverse.
So if you make change, that's what I was getting at. So if you're working on the multiverse theory, basically you've switched timelines. So you won't remember this happening because you're now on a different timeline because you've changed the past. So
Awesome.
there's no way you will remember it because it didn't actually happen to you. It's happening to an alternate version of you, which is moving into the future on this timeline. But you're from the future of another timeline. So you don't remember it because it didn't happen to you
Yep. And until you go
because it's
back,
been
it's not
because the past
factual.
has changed.
You don't know what could happen between now and then.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
and it's a good thing you say that, Giancarlos, because when you go back, I strongly believe you don't go back to your own time either.
No.
So in essence, the person that left the future, is lost on that timeline. It's as if
Gone forever.
they had an accident and they never came back, so they're declared dead. But that's just my thought based on
Well,
that.
you have a time stream that it is continuous and you're cognizant of it. That is one string like this. The moment you leave that string and drop back to an early part of that string, you change this, that suddenly disappears and there's a new one with you in it at that point. So suddenly you're from over here, but that's gone, and now you're moving up this one because you've put yourself back into your past. So it's different. So you don't exist in this timeline because you came from another one. So you
Yeah,
wouldn't remember it.
yeah. That's what actually one, and that's kind of leading to um my next thing. Um, I kind of wrote some of my notes here. So
Oh, you took notes.
yeah,
Did better
I,
than I did.
Wise
well,
nothing here.
my notes are not that good. I mean, I have to kind of interpret because I'm just writing as I go real fast. Um, uh,
Perfectionism.
but it's just notes on what I'm seeing on the movie. Um,
I was watching this while I was lifting weights, so there was no opportunity to write anything down.
So this could have been a strong movie for you.
for me,
No, for Ray.
oh,
A
He was
strong movie, yeah.
yeah, he was lifting weights.
Look, I have to admit, the movie is very easy. I'm making it more than what it actually is. For all of you guys listening, this is me. I overthink things and I go in that route. But don't get scared by the movie. The movie is very easy and it's not hard science at all. And they bend a lot of things, as you guys will discover from our conversations. But I have a tendency to think about things like this when I watch, especially movies that deal with time travel. Um, Go ahead.
I'll just give you a quote from the reception for the movie. It got 68%, so it's a little bit above average on Rotten Tomatoes. But the consensus reads: "You've seen Ryan Reynolds do this sort of thing before, but the Adam Project offers slickly entertaining and occasionally even moving sci-fi action," which
Yep.
I think it
Yep.
sums it up pretty well.
That's pretty
Yeah.
much it. So the question that I said I was leading into is another thing that I was thinking throughout the movie. I guess they taught the mission, the ultimate mission towards the end of the movie to help save the future, which was described as being worse than the Terminator future, is for Adam to go back to 2018 and stop time travel from ever existing. So, I know we talked about paradoxes. Um, would you have, if you would have traveled back, and again, I'm talking from the sense of multiverse. If you guys want to get me off of the multiverse bandwagon and talk about something else, I'm very okay. I'm just very partial to that theory. Very, very partial. So we can expand it more. We don't have to be talking about the multiverse. But in my thought within the multiverse, if he goes back and stop time travel from ever existing, um, then he no longer travels to past, present, or
Back to his
future.
time.
However, he's in a different timeline, right? So would would you say that? Let me see here. if you
It's a mission with no return.
you would not, I'm trying to explain it. You would not necessarily disappear. In my theory, in this, in using the multiverse, like they do on the end of the movie, unless you actually physically travel back. He can't possibly travel back because the machine eventually it got broken. They had time for one jump.
It's a hard paradox.
Yeah.
You
So,
cannot exist. You cannot exist here because you destroyed the way you got here.
but the way that I'm thinking, he's destroyed the
No,
way he got
because
there in another timeline.
no, because
I
it
mean, in another.
existed. It existed when he got here. It doesn't exist afterwards.
But in a different
Makes sense.
multiverse.
It's like me. It's like me painting something on a canvas and then burning it off. That doesn't mean that it never existed. It existed. I destroyed it. So the canvas was there.
In that time,
This-
in that branch of the multiverse.
no, let's put it simple. I think I like overcomplicated that analogy. The
Well,
the brush
too late
that I
for that.
used
I
to
already
paint
did it.
the brush that I used to paint the canvas,
Uh-huh.
I broke it. I disappeared. I disintegrated. That doesn't mean that the canvas wasn't painted. You know, the canvas is still there, which is him. He just doesn't have a way to go back.
So
it's not a case of breaking the brush. It's a case of the brush never existed.
yeah.
It did.
No,
The
it didn't.
painting is there to prove it, which
No, but
is him.
You went back in time and killed the person who created brushes. So
Yes.
that brush never existed. How did
There's
you
a
paint the
difference.
canvas?
There's
All
kind of
right.
slight difference.
I
there.
don't like arguing with you, man.
No, but
It's evil, isn't it? This is what we're doing is science. This is our opposing theories and
Yes.
working through this is what's called what's the term? This is
John Carlos, just so you know, you're being a scientist right now because that's what we're doing.
yeah.
I know. I'm being anything but a scientist. I'm being a moron talking crap.
But that's what science is about. Is you come up with a theory and then you prove or disprove yourself.
but my point is that the other thing that I was gonna say is, regardless of, let's forget about the whole thing about he not being there or being there with time travel. That they destroy a way for time travel to exist doesn't
Mhm.
mean that it's not going to be created in a further future again, or that doesn't exist somewhere else in the universe that we have not reached out to yet.
Well, it is possible. I believe
You know?
in this universe, in this movie, it is possible that someone down the line might have discovered, maybe not necessarily um right then, maybe farther down into the future, maybe just 5 years into the future, because I feel that if it was created, um or it was not necessarily, was never created in the first place because they went back and destroyed it, but the whole theory, the whole process, the whole um leading up to it was studied, was thought out, and he was actually in a university talking about the concepts. So I believe that someone maybe down the line might have continue unbeknown by them
Yeah.
and went in the same line and eventually created a time travel
And the example that I'm
again.
trying to use is that we don't know if there's any other race out there and how more behind or advanced from us they are, scientifically speaking, right? So there could be a time travel technology that already exists. Therefore, the fact that we destroy our technology doesn't mean that that doesn't exist. Does it make sense?
Yeah, extraterrestrial life.
Exactly. Let's talk about extraterrestrial life and that they have a way to time travel. So we discovered that and we destroy it for our own good. That doesn't mean that time travel still doesn't exist and doesn't work in the same mechanics.
Shameless plug. Episode Arrival, season 1.
Just before you move on, just going to make this bigger. Hang on a second. I'll just share this with you. I don't need to say anything about it. You just have to read it. There we go.
What do we want? Time travel. When do we want it? It's irrelevant.
Awesome.
Best
Awesome.
meme
Awesome.
ever.
That's
On
awesome.
point.
So, wow. So your thought is, would he be able to stay?
Just before we answer that question, I was just going to say that what we're doing here is what's called a thought experiment, and this is done a lot in psychology. I'll just give you this quick definition. So thought experiments are basically devices of the imagination. They're employed for various purposes such as entertainment, education, conceptual analysis, exploration, hypothesizing, theory selection, theory implementation, etc. Some applications are more controversial than others. But basically, it's a thought experiment illustrate complex state of affairs or those that are used in educational contexts. The situation is different, however, with responding to the appropriation of imagined scenarios to investigate reality. So basically, we're coming up with theories here. That's the very start of a scientific process, and thought experiments are a big part of that. What could happen? Why would it be relevant? Why wouldn't it be relevant? So to answer your question, there's obviously at least two schools of thought here. The first one would be, well, if we're talking about those timeline things, he's now existing through time travel from one timeline, which has now been removed into another timeline. So he should stay because now he's been returned to a point in time which is now on another timeline, and he exists on that timeline, so he shouldn't disappear. But then there's there is only one timeline hypothesis, and everything has to rationalize from these changes, which would mean that he would have to disappear because the time travel doesn't exist that he used, so therefore he wouldn't be there, so he would have to disappear. So there's two clear schools of thought in this, and depending on your feeling, it's more a feeling than anything because you don't have anything beyond the setup of the thought experiment to base this on, of which one is actually more relevant.
Yeah, that I definitely agree with that. Giancarlo, does that make sense of where I was going with this? Because I know, I had to clear the waters here. I'm
It
not a
does.
scientist.
It does.
I'm not a scientist. I just like to think about these things. So that does
You,
make
you,
sense to
you,
you, right?
It
you
does
do
make
know
sense to
that
me.
science is the study of our reality, and therefore you are a scientist, just not a professional one.
Hey, I'll take that. I'll take that.
Citizen scientist, it's called.
So yeah, so this is what I do. This is definitely what I do. And Giancarlo's, I think that's the reason why he suffered with me watching movies and how we stop and pause and recontinue.
I don't suffer because we wouldn't do it if I did.
We take so long watching a movie because of that reason. And just to be fair, I watched this movie like 4 times before we ended up. So I had enough time to think about things on this. So any particular science or not necessarily science, but any particular thought that came to you when you watched? I know I'm talking about all the stuff that it came to my head. I don't know if you guys had anything in particular that you want to point out before we continue, or that really
I
called
think
your attention.
I think the right, and I think Giancarlo mentioned this before, when his younger self was schooling his older self on things that he'd forgotten. And I thought that was really on point, in that as we grow older, we get fixated on the things we can't fix and we get upset about them. And I've done a lot of sort of reading and conceptualizing about thought and motivation and all those sorts of things and how they work and how your habits affect the way you think about things. And it really was quite on point the way the younger self was schooling the older self and saying, you've basically you were sad and angry, and the two of them combined, and you eventually came to the conclusion that they were the same thing, and you're still angry with Dad for dying, and it's got worse over time, and the whole exchange of the older Adam saying, "How did you get so smart?" and the younger Adam going, "When did you get so dumb?" It's just
And
beautiful. I loved it.
you touch a really good point, and this is something that I was thinking. Our memories are very malleable. It's I almost compare it to um, you know, computer or digital
Time is
recordings.
the corrosion of memories.
So like every time, you have this event happen to you, and it's in and you store it in your brain, and then later down in life you open it up. But you open it up with the feelings and emotions that you currently have, trying to recall the emotions and feelings you had when that event happened to you. And I think that corrupts the memory. You put it back again on your brain, and the more you open it, the more you um, corrode it, to the point where the memory that you remember now is not quite the same memory. I mean, not quite the same thing that happened when that happened to you. And I think
I can interject in there because I do journaling. I do journaling and I like to go back to when I write things how I felt at the moment. And what that does, it doesn't change your memory. Actually, it's better than trying to remember something because it's written as you felt it on the moment, but you're looking at it from a different outlook that allows you to get emotions out of the way to comprehend what was happening without emotions actually getting in the way of your understanding.
I don't know what Ray might think about this, but
Oh, I have lots to say, but I'm waiting.
I think, I'm going to say this and allow Ray to speak, because we're you know talking too much about this, but um I think it's great for analyzing an event with unbiased, well, kind of, to a certain extent, unbiased opinion, where you actually take your emotions, not necessarily you take your emotions, you're changing your emotions. So you're looking at this particular event from a written perspective, with different emotions, which are the emotions that you have at the time that you're reading them. Um, I think that's actually the most accurate way to um record events, and that's why history is so important, and the written history is so important. That's why I feel so bad when we lost uh,
Oh, yeah.
the Alexandrian uh,
Library.
library. There's a lot of things there that could have been amazing to read, but that still is not, we are who we are based on, like we discussed in one of the Radio Chaos episodes, where we are interpreting, in a biological sense, what we can perceive as sound, touch, uh we're viewing, we're smelling, and that creates some sort of emotion response as well. And what the biological changes that happen at the time that event happened will always be different from the biological changes that you have when you recall the memory, or when you read about a memory that you have recorded. And again, that just makes sense in my head. So, with that said, let Ray talk about this.
Okay, welcome to my TED talk. This is no, this is something that's been one of my favorite topics for quite a long time, and I've spent a lot of time thinking about it and trying to understand it. There's a whole lot of stuff here to unpack. Things like obviously observer bias or confirmational bias. So your current state, as you were saying, rather than changes, but your state at the time you observe something your emotions, how well you're feeling, how well you've slept, all that sort of stuff impacts upon your understanding and recognition of what's happening. Okay, so think about a time when you go and do something and you're stressed versus a time when you go and do the same thing but you're calm. They almost seem like completely different things, and that's not because the thing is different, it's because you are different. So the way you're feeling, and you're very right, Robert, in that the way you're feeling impacts heavily on how you recall something, how you perceive it in the first place. It's a known fact that events that happen in moments of high stress or high emotional impact, happy, sad, whatever, or stressed or elated or whatever it happens to be, some level of a high emotion within you when you're observing it gets stored more strongly than things that happen when you just couldn't give a shit. Like you don't remember, like you drive somewhere and it's a long drive. You don't remember most of the drive.
I
The
feel
only things you
somehow
remember is
paraphrased.
when you were busting to go to the toilet and you were looking for that service station to find a toilet, or when you were really hungry and you were looking for that Macca's because you were dying for a burger. Those are the things you remember, but all the other bits you don't. The brain just throws them out. The brain cannot store. Well, most people's brain cannot store every little factoid that comes into your head 24/7. It filters based on your emotions. If you don't care about it, it loses it. It's over the shoulder. You spot the girl in red, like from the Matrix. You spot your girl in red, and you get this huge flood of serotonin, and you're focused on her, and suddenly your senses are sharpened, and you're taking every little thing in because you want to remember it, and that memory will stick with you for your entire life because you're at a highly emotional state at the time. So if there's ever anything that you want to really remember, get angry, get happy, get something. Okay, and then it will stay in your brain. That's a personal trigger that you can use to remember something. So if you want to remember something for an exam, get angry, or get start smiling and try and make yourself happy about that fact, and it will stick in your brain better than if you're just scanning through a million facts and your eyes are
Or
glazed over and you don't
or
care.
you can carry a hammer and just hit yourself in the pinky every time it happens. So you gotta remember because of that what happened.
I think your pinky won't like you so much. But anyway, what I'm getting at with this is that your brain is impacted by how you feel about something. Now, your idea about corroding memories is close, but not what the current thinking is. The current thinking is that when you remember something and you think about it, it's observational bias again. So you have observational bias when you first remember something, and you have observational bias every time you think about it. So memory is imperfect. You think about it, and then you put it back away again in the form that you thought about it, and you add more sort of metadata, emotional metadata to it.
Yeah.
So when you do, you get it out. It's sort of like say you had like a Fabergé egg, right? You know what a Fabergé egg is?
Mhm.
The really delicate eggs that have been decorated with gold leaf and all sorts of stuff like that. Imagine a memory as a Fabergé egg. Now, when you originally get it, you touch it, right? And a little bit of the acid from your fingers gets onto it, and on skin oil and all that sort of stuff changes it slightly. You put it away, and then every time you go to look at it, the only way you can look at it is to get it out and handle it, right? So every time you handle it, you change it slightly. And sometime when you're handling it, you may get a cloth and give it a clean and remove some of that grime or what have you. But it's irreparably changed every time you get it out. Now, journaling is a good thing in that, obviously, when you write something down, and everybody knows this from emails and things like that, you lose a lot of what's called the metadata, all the emotional data and all that sort of stuff surrounding it. And that can actually be quite useful because you're actually sweeping away a lot of that crunch on your Fabergé egg and just keeping the important data, the factual data of what actually happened. And this is what causes a huge amount of trouble in courts of law, because all that metadata confuses people and changes the way they perceive things. And what's happening in the court of law is actually trying to swipe all that away and get down to the facts, just the facts in the case, to work out who's guilty and who's innocent and what actually happened. But coming back to what we're talking about, every time you unpack something and think about it, you change it and then you put it back away again. My father was a big problem with this. He believed that his memory was absolute, and he would sit and think about things until they changed so much that he was happy with them. And then what he claimed happened was different from what you claimed happened. And I even went to the extent of filming something that he was upset about, and then coming back and showing him the film later on to show him that what he was thinking was no longer what actually happened. And he basically got very upset with me and told me that I was full of shit. So, some people.
You see, what you're saying is very intertwined with my way of actually recording experiences, which is keeping journals.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Something happens, I write it right there. I read it a year after, and I actually rethink about it and observe it way past that emotional state where I was.
I think
where it doesn't even matter, but I learn new things about me. I look at the situation from a different standpoint, or I said I was right, I was wrong, but it's the thing. Emotions get in the way of complete logic and complete trouble solving. You cannot solve any trouble.
Emotions have their place, but they will fuck you up a lot of the time.
I always said, since I can't remember when it was the first time that I said this, to friends and family. I think I posted a couple of times on this, where I say, hard emotions are rational thinking's worst enemy.
Yes, absolutely.
And I strongly believe that. And the problem with this, also to bring back to your point, Giancarlos, we're so malleable that even recalling an event that happened to us, just so we know what happened or just so we can recount, changes us in the future.
Yeah.
It's insane. But I mean, I'm not sure if Ray agrees with me, but it's, it doesn't matter how you could record it as journaling or photographic or video, and it's still actually, some mediums are actually worse than others, in my opinion. So,
no, but, knowledge is incomplete. Knowledge in your brain doubly so. Just like the Alexandria Library burning down and losing thousands of years of knowledge, you lose bits of knowledge out of your brain. Probably the worst way to die is dementia, and my father went through this as well, and I watched him go, where you forget people, you forget things, you've lost your past, and losing that is akin to losing self.
yes,
because you are what events happened in your life basically created you. All those are your journals.
Yeah. So, for all of you that are not watching the video,
that's how much of an overthinker I am.
Mm-hmm.
Giancarlos is showing his journals.
I journal everything. There are even conversations that I've had on WhatsApp or whatever that people tell me you should write that shit on a book. So like I have a lot of homework of just going back on conversations to type them down, because at the end of the day, it's thoughts that we have, and it's just what Robert says. Like we are a product of what happened to us. So at the end of the day, the send thing to tell to your previous person or whoever you were in the past is make the mistakes that you're gonna make, because that's what's gonna make you who you are. And if you're gonna succeed, it's gonna be thanks to every single mistake that you make.
I would actually say make the non-fatal ones.
Make the non-fatal
ones.
ones.
Kind of end things pretty quickly.
Non-fatal ones, yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, that depends on your care for self-preservation.
There was a period of time in my life back when I was going to university where I nearly died twice in 2 days. First one was I nearly fell off a cliff, I ended up hugging a tree and working my way around the side of the tree. And the second one, I was in a rolled car the next day, and it had one of those old-fashioned seatbelts with just a cup and a hook. And unless you pull it super tight, it just goes and comes apart. It came apart 30 seconds before the car rolled, and I went, no, my father always told me, put a seatbelt on. So I put the seatbelt on, tightened it up. I was hanging upside down in it 30 seconds later.
Oh my god.
Wow.
And if I hadn't put that seatbelt on, I would have died.
We got a lot to relate to, man. I had 2 car accidents in the last 8 months, and not 2 weeks ago, in the dark, in a beach on a coral reef wall, I jumped into a hole 4 feet down in the front flip and landed on my head.
Oof.
And the only thing that I thought in the dark while I was doing that front flip and scratching myself all over because I was trying to grapple to something in the air was, this is it. I'm gonna be found here bloated.
Wow.
And
But
I
that's
mean,
what I think it's important to live every day like your last day too, you know?
But this whole thing about timelines and you being erased from from reality is like, every time you go close to dying, there's another timeline where you made a mistake in the opposite direction, you died. So
Yeah.
that piano that fell out of the building and landed just next to you, if you'd taken a step to the left, it would have landed on your head and you were dead. So there's obviously alternate realities where you do not exist anymore, because those you nearly dieds became you dieds. So,
And that, it's a good thing you mentioned that, because you know how, we have already proven that my school of thought is we are the products of our surroundings or our experiences. And that includes emotion, like we just talked. In alternate realities, these selves have gone through different experiences or eventually go through different experiences. So it is possible that you meet, and again, I'm talking in theory here because we never seen this, but in theory, it's possible that you meet another self that is completely far a, a far departure from who you are right now, because of the experiences that they have gone through has forged them in a complete different way.
Yeah.
exactly.
So
I
that's
mean,
why, go ahead. I'm sorry.
you make a lot of decisions emotionally in your life, which would have a huge impact on things like that. I mean,
You say a lot of decisions emotionally in your wife?
in your life.
Ah,
Life.
okay.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I was speaking
Both
too
are
quickly.
correct. Both are correct.
Fair enough. That's what she said. But yeah, I mean, you make a decision when you're highly emotional. If you'd made the other decision, if you were calmer, or if it'd gone the other way, it would make a huge difference in your life. And you're quite right, Robert, in that if you were able to jump timelines or move to alternate realities, you might have had a very different situation, a very different you.
Yeah, that's what I found that movie, The One, very fascinating.
Or no you at all.
Huh?
Or no you at all.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
mightn't be there.
Yeah. Because
Well, there's a
something
movie
might have
there's
happened
a
in the
movie
past.
that Robert has me curious about called um, Everything at Once, All at Once at the same
Everything,
time.
everything, everywhere, all at once. I'm dying to see that movie. It talks
Oh.
about multiverse.
Oh, and by the way, I saw that Matrix Resurrection came back somewhere. So watch it, Matt Ray.
I bought it. I liked it. I liked it.
Watch
You
it,
know,
Ray. It's worth
own
it.
it. I honestly think I don't know. In my opinion, they fixed some of the problems with the last one. So
I think it's perfect, and I think that they refer a lot, which is I think something that they failed on on the Revolution, because Reloaded was fun because it was loaded with more action, but it was not so much into the actual details about the characters and everything else. But where they fix it is, I think that they took more details of the universe on the animatrix and all these back data informations that actually shaped up the world to what it was supposed to be. Actually,
in the game, which I found very interesting that they consider that game also. Which, by the way, I played it. They consider it canon. So, but this is why we need to do an episode on this movie. We can talk a lot more in depth about it. But yeah, I agree with you. I I, I definitely.
how do you feel about doing an episode on Inception, Ray?
Oh, that's a complicated little beastie. That one.
That's in our blacklist.
Is it the little spinny top thing through me? It's like
That that movie I watched it already 3 times this week again.
And I can tell you,
That's
I
how
can
much I
tell
like it.
you, I can tell you, there's fans out there that are still waiting for us to do an episode on that.
I watched it 3 times this week again.
well, I tell you what, if you can get one of those rabid fans on to do it, I'll do it.
If I can, what?
Well,
The
if we
fan
can
thing?
get one, if we can get, sorry, I'm having more caffeine. It's probably not a good plan. You'll have to run the podcast at 2/3 speed so people can understand me. I was just saying, if you can get a rabid fan that knows all about them, all about Inception on and has theories, then I'm all for it.
Yeah,
We'll give it a shot.
awesome.
See how deep we can go in the Inception.
Yeah, that is one rabbit hole.
Oh,
Don't worry. I won't. I'll take a leap of faith.
Alice has got nothing on that rabbit hole.
I gotta point out a couple of things about this movie that I don't know if you guys noticed. And I don't know, I don't even know if it is intentional or not. But in the scene where they go into the Hadron Collider,
Yeah,
if you look up, you
which look pretty
see
small.
what, yeah. If you look up to what appears to be multiple doors, I don't know. I recall seeing, and I wish I would have taken screenshots, but there's two particular doors that seem very familiar. And I don't know if you guys noticed this, but after I speak, go ahead and rewatch this and go to that scene and tell me what you think. But they're blue doors, reminiscing of the TARDIS on two different, um, states.
Nah, I just think you like
No,
Doctor
no, no,
what?
no. That
Who?
and I seen comments online about this too.
Who? Who?
Exactly,
Doctor?
exactly. So I don't know if you guys noticed that. I have to actually rewatch the movie after I heard
I
it
did not.
online. And yeah, I mean they're not exactly, but I wonder if this is like you know how they do an homage, since it is a time travel
Yeah,
movie.
it could be also an Easter egg
Because I
for.
mean, I found tons of things like this throughout the movie. Um,
There's probably plenty of Easter eggs.
Yeah, I don't doubt that. I actually agree with that. It could be filled up with Easter eggs
like
because time travel,
and the
and
way
there's a
they,
whole society about that and science fiction fanship. You know?
yeah, they're like there's tons of different things, and then the way they do it is slightly different.
Subtle.
Maybe the reason why they didn't do the doors exactly like the TARDIS is maybe intellectual property issues. Maybe, I don't know, but like there's a scene when they're running away from the soldiers, and they're inside that uh, let's call it jungle or forest, and they're running it at high speed. That scene, I read online, it's reminiscent of two separate things. One is the chase scene on Back to the Future, where they have to escape the hoverboards,
Mhm.
and the one that I can recall even more than the Back to the Future trope is the Star Wars. Was it the second movie? When
I
they're in
actually was
the
thinking of Star Wars when they were in the world and they were looking for the Wookiees.
their high chase on those speed bikes.
Yep.
Almost verbatim, if you think about it, because
Yep.
one
That's what I
explodes
was thinking when I saw it.
and the other one turns around just the same way. So I mean, I can see both, but I see the Star Wars even more.
Yep.
So you did notice that, Ray? Did you notice that?
Yeah, they took some movement beats from Star Wars, definitely, and that's not an uncommon thing in movies to, rather than take the way something looks, is take the way something moves, because people subconsciously pick that stuff up, and they will feel comfortable with it. And it happens in audio as well. There's this thing called the Wilhelm scream. Do you know what that is?
Oh yeah, that's so.
The
I love
Wilhelm
hearing this
scream.
guy.
It's that when somebody gets shot and falls off something, or gets pushed off something, and that Wilhelm scream has been used and reused and reused in so many different shows. Recently, in the Book of Boba Fett, it was used, and it was commented on that. Oh, there's the Wilhelm scream, um, and people just they become comfortable with it. It happens a lot in anime as well. There's certain things that certain I wouldn't call them tropes, but they're just ways of displaying a particular thing that is used as a standard. Like whenever there's something sexy that happens in an anime, they do that wow sort of sound. You know the one I mean?
Yes.
And it's just one of those standard things that's used now to get that point across. And why I'm saying that is because using the same sort of movement as something from a famous sci-fi property, it's not considered copyright, because you can't really copyright the way something moves.
Mhm.
It's more the way something looks.
It's what we
But
do for the essays on university. It's called paraphrase.
yeah, but I mean, you can call it homage. But
Yeah,
it's comfortable. People are
that's a
used to it.
glorified word for it.
Yeah, it is. It's the good word. It's the good word. But basically, when you use something that people are comfortable with, it makes them more comfortable. They can relate to it better because it's something
it
they
brings
already
it
know.
brings a place to nostalgia.
Yeah.
And
It,
nostalgia is something that makes you feel comfy at home. It's like, for me, for example, like something that I love doing for that nostalgia. I love replaying the Lord of the Rings saga and The Hobbit over and over and over and over and over and over and over. I watch Lord of the Rings saga maybe once a month.
And I think this movie is trying to do what my idea of this is sci-fi hashtag is. Um, and I really like this. Like, for example, it's trying to bring different fandoms together, and the thing is, I like to think that this was intentional, at least from the writer's perspectives, because it's, I mean, very subtle. Like, for example, if we look at the Laura, right, at the end of the movie, when she meets Adam, supposedly for the first time in school, that she was in the wrong class, she was in the wrong building, in the wrong campus.
mhm.
um when Adam asks what she does, she says she's trying to attend a lecture in computational linguistics. If we know Zoe Saldana plays Uhura in the Kelvin timeline Star Trek, and Uhura in any time universe, to Kelvin or not, is a skilled linguistics. So they're doing very very subtle things
Oh
from
yeah.
all different IPs. Like, what we just talked about, the chase scene on the forest, very very reminiscent of Star Wars. You have Star Trek, you have Back to the Future, you have Doctor Who. And I think this is fantastic. And I refuse to think that it was not intentional.
I think it was intentional. I think it was quite smart. Drawing in other IPs it's like a Venn diagram. You're basically creating points of intersection with other things that people like, and it gives them that nostalgic, comfy feeling, as Jen was saying, and it makes them feel more comfortable with the property, and also more invested in the property. So
Like,
it's smart work.
yeah, I mean, look at, for example, when the young and the big and young Adam are together staying in that motel. You guys realize that motel, it's Pine Ridge Motel, with a logo of the three pines trees. in reference
Mhm.
Back to the Future, the
with
1985
the
movie.
with the Twin Pines Mall and the
Exactly.
Lone Pine Mall because he ran
So,
over the tree.
and again, that's a different alternate universe because at the end of the saga, we know that becomes what is it, Lone Pine Mall?
Yes.
Because
Yep.
he
So
destroyed.
it's Twin Pine Mall till he runs over one of the pine trees when it's little in the DeLorean.
So it's kind of funny because you go Three Pines, motel, Two Pines Mall, one, Lone Pine Mall. So,
Mm-hmm.
and another most obvious. This is actually the most obvious that I found in the movie. Is if you guys remember towards the end of the movie when the dad, Mark Ruffalo, invites the older Adam and the younger Adam to play baseball.
To throw the ball around, yeah.
To throw the ball. I don't know if you guys notice on
That was just a dagger in the heart.
yeah, I don't know if you guys notice the let me call it suitcase, but I can think of any better word
It,
for
The
it.
trunk.
it looked like
The
a
trunk.
time capsule.
The trunk what he had, the
The
baseball
ball in
ball,
the
the
mid-seat.
gloves, and all the stuff.
Yeah.
If you stop it, which is very hard, I'm going to tell you because I tried to show my wife and I had to stop it right at the right moment, and it took me like 5 or 6 times to try to stop it at that time because it's very very fast. There is a sticker of Hulk and a sticker of Deadpool on that. Um, if you don't
Oh,
pause
that
it,
is
you'll
and there
miss it.
cute.
wasn't any Wolverine around.
No, it was
I'm
just
I'm
a sticker.
disappointed. I'm disappointed in Ryan Reynolds though.
It was a sticker. There's a bunch of stickers there for like it's things like kit stuff. But the most obvious stickers you see a Hulk, just a Hulk, and you see the little Deadpool symbol where the two little dots inside the black and the
Yeah.
and that was like, oh man, yeah, this is the most obvious thing that I found, pointing this out to other IPs than everything else throughout the entire movie. And I actually invite the listeners, if you find any other stuff in this movie that we have missed, um, point it out. Just hashtag this is sci-fi and let's talk about it. Let me know because I'm very curious if you found anything else other than the stuff that we have mentioned here before. So
I particularly liked when the puppy was running after they played ball and the two atoms disappeared. The puppy was running across the patio and ran behind a bush, and then the adult dog ran out, and that was the transition back to 2022. I thought that was particularly well done
I heard
as a
that was
storytelling device.
whose dog was it? That one scene towards the end of the movie that you have that you see Hawkins show up. I think it's Jennifer's dog in real life, if I'm not mistaken. He only had like a few seconds in the movie. Um, did you know that? And this is something that I just gotta point it out because I, I I think this would have been a complete different movie. I think because I mean you have the writers already wrote the movie, but you know how it is. Sometimes there are changes based on the actor, but this movie was previously set by Paramount Pictures in 2012, and it was supposed to be Tom Cruise.
All right.
How do you feel about? I don't think this movie would have been the movie that it is right now if it was Tom. I
No,
mean,
not
don't
at
get me
all.
wrong. I like Tom Cruise. I like all his movies, but
But
this
I don't.
movie,
I think Tom Cruise is way too much of a serious actor to add that comical home feeling that Ryan Reynolds brings. Tom Cruise lacks that sarcasm.
yeah, I mean the comedy because I know there would have been comedy there. It would have been a
Yeah.
complete different type of comedy.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I just want to point that out because I was really curious when I found it. Um, that about this.
And I mean, I'm not saying that Ryan Reynolds cannot do serious roles because if you see this movie, there's so many emotional moments that are very serious. are actually very hard touching, and that didn't stop it from being actually like putting a comedy in everything, even when he didn't want to let go of his wife, and he actually took up with a kid.
Yeah.
So you see, like many of these things, like I cannot picture Tom Cruise doing it, for example.
Yeah.
Not because he's not capable of, but I don't think that it would have the same effect on the public.
Yeah.
Can you guys see that share?
Huh?
Let me see. Okay.
That's the back of the case.
Oh yes, you see that? That's the Hulk and Deadpool.
What else in there? Hell Hydra?
No, I didn't find it. It was just a bunch of like kid stickers all around. But that's
What
the
is
most
that?
obvious.
What is that on top of Hulk?
It says creature.
Creature. Word.
But yeah, I thought that was worth sharing. I managed to snap it.
Yeah. So, and then what I was going to say, about the seriousness of Ryan Reynolds' performance, and then we have, you know, come in, Red Leader. This is Sippy Cup Buttercup,
Yeah.
which is another reference to Star Wars, by the way.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
But yeah, and I love that they picked the dog's name is a reference to the late physicist Stephen Hawking's. If you didn't figure it out by now, but so you guys have any final thoughts on this movie?
Uh, it was an enjoyable, entertaining movie. It had some good ideas in it. Ryan Reynolds was really good in it. Well, he's really good in most things, but the comedy was on point. One of the comments when they come up out, in the lift with the two copies of Adam and the father, and the older Adam looks over at his father and said, "Well, I think bring your son to work day worked out really well." So blew up the accelerator. It's all good. The comedy was so on point,
What
and
about
it
the
had a
scene
good.
prior to that when the dad came in and saved them? Basically, it's like saying, "You shaved my ass with a Subaru."
Yeah,
The comedy was on point.
yeah,
It
it
was.
really was.
It
It
was.
was well written, well acted, and it was quite entertaining. I would highly recommend people go and watch this. Leave your physics knowledge at the door, perhaps, but other than that, it's really quite enjoyable.
Yeah. Uh, Giancarlo, what is your final thought in this movie?
My final thought in this movie. Well, I don't think that the movie leaves open a casing for more of it to another movie. I think it had good closure. I think
Well,
it
it is
had
a
a great.
sequel after all.
It is a
Huh?
sequel.
It's a
It's a
Well,
sequel
sequel to
after all.
13 going on 30.
that's a supposed sequel. Cause I'm gonna do some Ray Jurai on you right now, but the other movie has is no science fiction.
Hot take. Mic drop.
Mic drop.
So, but I mean, I think that the movie was perfect. I think it's a movie that is worth watching more than one time, for
Yeah.
sure. And for me, a movie that is worth watching more than once is a good movie. Is a very good movie. Because when you watch a movie and just you don't feel like ever watching it, not even like just passing by, like, oh, let me just put this, you know, it's like it didn't have any kind of effect on you, you know.
Yeah.
But this movie is just packed with a lot of wholesome moments,
Mm.
and all those are not really that much intertwined with science fiction, if not with the emotional uh, situations that were happening in the life of every character of this movie.
I think it brings it
That's what
closer to
connects us
home.
to it as humans.
Yeah. I agree with that. It brings it more to home. It makes it more emotional, more realistic. Although,
No,
like Ray
I'm not
say,
comparing
leave your
it.
physics at home. But
I'm not comparing it with Ad Astra, but it's like Ad Astra is supposed to be a science fiction movie. And
Mhm.
when we were discussing it, what we all got to agree with is that it was way more psychological as science fiction and scientific in any other kind of way, even though it
Yes,
was packed with science.
yes,
And this movie is the same thing.
yes. I think you got a point there. It's more of an emotional, uh, if you want to call it emotional sci-fi.
Yeah. It's like Space Sweepers. Like Space Sweepers, for example. Space Sweeper, it had the same feeling. I watched Space Sweeper. Space Sweeper was a beautifully made movie. It's a wholesome movie filled up with emotional moments. Of course, freaking Koreans. You cannot be greater. They cannot be greater. They had to be perfect at everything.
So you would give this movie the Robert seal of approval of
Yeah,
Disney, Disney endings.
yeah, I will.
We should make that a thing.
I'm
It
gonna
was a
make
pretty
a
happy
badge.
ending,
I'm
gotta
gonna make
say.
a badge that's gonna say Disney happy ending. Giancarlo's approval for Robert.
Robert approved.
No, I approve because Robert has like a weak heart for
Yes, I
like dark
know.
movies. So if it doesn't have like a happy ending, or if the main character like he invests himself in the characters, so like I can tell you, for example, if Ryan Reynolds would have died, or if there would have to be a sacrificial character of one of the main characters, he wouldn't have liked this movie at all. I bet my ass on that.
Yeah, the movie would have sucked.
He would have sucked the movie, right? I knew it.
Let me throw a spanner in the works. The younger version of Saurian dies in the reactor chamber. She wasn't a bad person. She
At the
was
time.
arguing against her older, more jaded, mean, nasty, megalomaniac self a lot
Yes
of the
and
time.
no.
But
Yes
But
and
he,
no.
but
Yes
here's the
and no,
difference.
because I mean, you saw. I don't know if it was shock, but psychologically observing her, she was not doing anything actively to get in the way of what she was trying to do. She was just standing there, and it's what I tell a lot of people. I tend to be very crude with decision making and the effects that it have and the loss of causality. Some people think that not doing something, it's not taking a decision, and not taking a decision, it's still taking a decision, and it's gonna have an effect.
yeah, but there's something else on top of that. If your older self came back and started bossing you around, how would you feel about it?
My older
Yeah,
self. Well, I'm gonna
Mm.
ask. I'm gonna ask. I'm gonna do to him like that woman that tells the guy like, "Oh, she's buzzing him around not smoking cigarettes." And like a box of cigarettes is $7, and if you spend so many $7 every other week, you're gonna spend so many $1 million. So you will have a Ferrari and a private jet in 10 years. And then the guy goes, "And where's your Ferrari and your private jet?" And she's just like, so I'm gonna ask him that, and he tells me he has a jet and a Ferrari. I'm gonna be like, yes, sir.
so basically, you're agreeing with Ray. You're not going to let yourself be bossed around by your older
I'll
self.
no, I'll question myself and see my results. If there's results behind it, then I'll follow. You
Well,
know,
what you've got to realize that if you're looking at the
my modus
multiverse,
operandi, my way of thinking, just to close the parenthesis, is I'll go and look forward just for so nobody has to tell it to me. I think for myself and I question authority. That doesn't mean that I go against it, but that way I have an understanding. It's the difference between breaking a neck from outside and it breaking from within. It's having my own realization. So if my own self comes to the future and try to boss me around, I mean, Ryan Reynolds didn't have to do much. He's a freaking fucking pilot. He's a badass. So he already bought the kit. He saw himself like, oh,
I
this
got
guy, I want
muscles.
to be him.
I got muscles.
He was
yeah, but
dying to like
obviously people in the future ignore leg day just like they do now.
yeah.
Oh, that was a good one. So what I was basically going to say was that if you think about it as like where you are now at the base of a tree, and this person that comes back from the future and starts bossing you around, that's one branch of an entire tree where you could become any of the top branches as you grow. Um, Asshole you in the future has made choices based on what happened to them that may not end up happening to you because they've changed their past. So that may not be you in the future anymore. So would you listen to them?
I will listen to them. That doesn't mean I will do what they tell me.
Hmm.
That
Yeah,
is what it's what I say. It's what I said to everybody when I'm talking to somebody, having a discussion about any specific topic. You can ask Robert. Uh, I tell them I don't want to convince you. I want you to consider what I had to say, as I'm going to consider what you're gonna have to say. Because at the end of the day, we both might end up with two completely different ideas, but they're gonna be changed thanks to that consideration.
Yeah,
You
and
know?
I have to say, again, based on what I said before, we are the products of our surroundings, our experiences.
Yeah.
When you are open to opposing, thoughts on contrary to what um your thoughts are, I think it's a win-win just by considering it, because you're opening to a different perspective on the topic, and that changes you. And the more you're exposed to something like that, the better it makes you as a person, and that's just
You
how I feel.
you are open to improvement. You're not
Mhm.
stagnant.
I mean, I'm not saying trust
It's like
everything you're being told,
let's
right?
not go further. You mentioned Neil deGrasse Tyson. Neil deGrasse Tyson says something about, and I'm gonna talk a little bit about God, but I'm not gonna talk about religion or anything like that. But he says something about God that I love, I adore. That's one other thing that made me fell in love with him. Is like he tells people, it's not that I don't believe in God. I don't have proof to tell you that he exists, but I don't have proof to tell you that he doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
so and this is one of the topics that he loves the most, about finding the science behind God. You know, so like is that openness to consider, to
Yes.
at least not be ignorant by your own decision. You know, because
Just
I mean, there's
because,
no there's no worse blind person than the one that chooses not to see.
yeah, the just because someone has an opposed thought or vision of yours,
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean that they are wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Well, a true scientist in the face of the data will say, well, I, I, I have a personal opinion whether God exists or doesn't exist, but the data does not prove whether it, it as an entity exists or doesn't exist, so the jury is out.
And he
If a
continues
scientist
to
tell you that scientifically God does not exist, he's lying because there's no
Yes,
data to prove or disprove it.
there's no data.
exactly, but they continue to work on that, and it's something that it's sadly has become rare in today's society. Is that people are not comfortable that it's okay to agree to disagree. You know, so when they're starting a conversation, their only mission is to convert the other person
Mm-hmm.
into their method of belief
Young people
instead
do
of
that a lot.
exactly. So when they're doing that, it's not a conversation anymore.
No,
It's a monologue. It's
it's
a
a beat
dictate.
down.
It's a dictatorship speech. You know. So I mean, it's like when you discover that, at least me, when I discovered that I'm talking with somebody and that's their intention, I feel fooled and I feel disrespected. You know, it's like you lost me. Like I have no interest. You know, because at the end of the day, it's a way that a person psychologically is telling them that they're superior to you and that you don't deserve the consideration of your thoughts as theirs. You
We're
know?
all perspectives.
Yeah.
We are
Oh
all
yeah.
perspectives. So your perspective dictates your reality. And this is why I say everyone has a bias. And
Mm.
it's very hard. And Ray, you can speak to this too. It is very hard to admit on your biases. And I
Oh
think
yeah.
that the the more you are uh, know about this, that you would be open to different perspectives. And this is something that I learned, which is kind of funny. When I went to the university, I thought I had no biases. I was like, well, I don't have no bias. I'm a good guy. I agree with everybody.
But good guys are biased.
So, and then when I went through the class and I realized, holy crap, I do. And they get in the way of learning. So
Would you like me to show you one of your biases right now?
yes, please.
Okay, so Giancarlo was saying that if Ryan Reynolds had died at the end of the movie, you would have been upset.
Yes.
But you had no problem with Soren dying because she was a bad person.
Because I didn't have enough time to
He was not
invest
emotionally
emotional
invested on
vested.
her.
But basically what I'm saying is that your bias is good guys. That is
Yeah.
a bias.
Yes.
You don't have a global perspective of all life is sacred.
Heroes.
The movie could be
He likes
good
heroes.
if the hero dies. The movie already sucked. That's a bias too.
Yeah, heroes.
Exactly.
Heroes.
It's a preference, and preferences are biases.
So
But yeah.
that's something that I learned the hard way when I took that class at the university, that I do have a bias, and I was not expecting
We all
that at
do.
all.
But you know that's a bit that's one big thing that many people don't have the capacity to, is to look inwards and say, yes, I do have that.
Yeah.
You know, most people are not even capable to do that. I actually have psychology is one of my favorite things. Actually, even though I have a bachelor's on logistics, I would say that 50% of my classes are on psychology. And I have learned that most people, they would literally drop dead before looking inwards and accepting the bad things as a person that they have, and pretend to live on just with their super ego, which is what they're think that they're supposed to be, but they're not really.
Well, to quote your buddy Neil deGrasse Tyson, he was saying that any data that cannot be recorded by a device, a machine, is suffers from personal bias and therefore cannot be included as data within a scientific experiment. And he's right. If you cannot record it, then it is biased.
It's true.
Personal observations are always biased.
No, don't go further. Even communication. When I'm having a conversation with a person, and I'm telling them I don't want to have this conversation over the phone or over text. We have to get together on a table and talk. Why? Because even written communication or spoken communication lacks body language and many other micro components that completely changes what signifies everything within what's being spoken about.
Well, communication is 70% nonverbal.
Yeah.
So even when you're having a discussion, there's where the person's looking, how their bodies form, what they're doing with their hands.
That's why communication is so important in marriage.
Oh, for sure.
That's what she said.
But let's not go into that one because this stream will end up way longer.
Oh man. So are we ready for the next segment?
Yeah, sure. Yep. In fact, run the thing and then I'll talk.
The science in sci-fi.
Okay, so when Robert asked me about this a couple of hours ago now, he said, "If you got anything for this?" And I said, "Well, I don't have anything specific because there's a lot of fuzzy science in this one." And then I was looking through because I had Netflix open in another window. I was looking through it to grab that image at the back of the case because I hadn't noticed that, and I hit upon one that's actually in there that I can talk about. So that is controlling drones with your virtual reality goggles.
Nice.
So actually the Oculus Quest 2 can control a drone called a Mavic Air 2. So basically you put on the goggles and the drone has a camera on it and you can see what the camera and the drone can see. He's got his goggles there.
Yeah, Giancarlo's has his goggles. Put it on now.
It's been a dream of mine to get a DJI.
But yeah,
But
if you've got
those
the spare
fuckers
cash
are
to spend,
$1,200.
apparently it's a little bit tricky, but obviously that was something that they did in the show, which was tech from 2050, which obviously is a bit further advanced than what we have here. But obviously they put that in leveraging what we have now. So rather than the science fiction happening decades ago and
But don't you
science
think that
facts becoming
don't you think that's real? That actually already exists. I mean, we have drone pilots already.
yes.
So wouldn't you think that does already exist? I mean, I was told, and this could sound conspirational. I don't even remember who told me right now. But
You
like,
mean
for example,
conspiratorial?
conspiratorial. But the 3G connection that came out with the iPhone 4 or 3 or 5, I don't remember. They told me that this technology was invented on the 60s when supposedly computers were being created, but are released to us right now.
A lot of these come up as theories long before they're made reality. So
Yeah.
the theory of how it might work may have been invented in the 60s, but technology had to catch up. So that's quite possible. I mean, the theory of computers has been around since the 1800s, but
Yes.
wasn't actually be able to come to fruition until the computer chip was invented.
I
So
remember what is it, the latest G on cell phones? There's so many.
5G,
The 5G.
5G.
I remember this from 2001, where the technology, I was reading about it. It was called WiMAX.
And now we're getting COVID from it. I just had to say that.
Yeah. Oh my God.
You
Yeah.
you go into the scientific naughty corner for 5 minutes. I'm sorry.
Yeah. There you go. You're going to the corner, boy.
No, I'm just being an annoying flat earther.
But I agree with Ray. I remember that technology being developed in 2001, and it was called something completely different. So it is very possible that this is what's going on, and people are misinterpreting it as being something that, you know, it was somehow created, and people are not using it for X or Y reason.
Well, the
let me
reasons
not
they
go
don't use
further.
it,
Let me
the
not go
reasons they
further.
don't use it are often other technologies that need to be miniaturized to the point where you can actually use it.
Exactly.
I mean, not many people use those massive, massive telephones that were bigger than your head. At the very beginning, it was only the early adopters that got
The
into
green
that.
Nokias.
Yeah, well, yeah, the one with the big aerial, or the one that had to be attached to your car because it couldn't have enough power
Yes,
I have
to
one of
actually
those.
use it.
I remember those.
And not many people would have used it, but the real techno geeks that wanted to be the first in, the early adopters, they
Rover
used it.
actually still has his palm.
And I have my car phone. Oh, the Palm Pilot, the very first Palm
Robert
Pilot.
had a Palm Pilot, and he showed it to me. He still has it. It's
Did I
functional.
did I show you my car phone?
No,
This is one of those car phones that it looks like a purse, and the base goes in the trunk
oh
of
my
your
god.
car, and then on the front where you drive, you plug in it looks like a normal telephone cable, and you have that little face where you have the numbers.
And
Um,
you put the parable on top on the roof.
no, there's it says 1988, 1989. I had it on my car. It was $1 a minute, incoming or outgoing, doesn't matter.
Holy shit!
But I mean, if there aren't early adopters, that stuff never becomes common. But it's all got to be miniaturized and made financially viable for the average person before it gets widely adopted. So that's one of the reasons why stuff doesn't get picked up straight away. It's invented in the 60s, but the thing was housed in a room.
Yeah.
It wasn't even mobile to start with. So you've the theory comes up first. Then they make it practical, but it's massive. My father was telling me about the first computer in my hometown, Albury, was in a car dealership, and they used it to calculate, pricings for cars and loan repayments and all that sort of stuff. But it was housed in a room, and that's how
Wow.
big it was. The original computer in my hometown was, and of course now we've got we've got these guys that have more computing power than the entire Apollo program. So,
It's
these things change.
insane.
They get miniaturized. They become more high tech, and that's why things aren't adopted straight away. They've got to mature. It's called maturing in technology terms. But the point that I was getting back to before we got sidetracked was that a lot of times, especially in sci-fi that we talk about that was decades ago, you have science fiction which becomes science fact by the process of somebody thinks of it in science fiction. Oh, that's really cool. Let's see if we can make that happen. And that's how you get tablets and smartphones and all these sorts of things. But this is because this is a new property. We've got science fact, which is the controlling your Mavic Air 2 drone with your Oculus Quest 2 as current science fact, being extrapolated out into the future and becoming science fiction in higher specs and all sorts of U-Butte improvements to the technology and range and all sorts of things that you could expect to happen over the period of 30 years. So that's where current science fiction is already science fact and becomes better, rather than science fiction from the past. We look now and go, well, that's where they got the idea to make this from.
I kind of like how the movie made this, because even when you look at the spaceships, they look like fighter jets more than they do spaceships, and everything is you could see how we can go from now to there, because it almost feels like the technology is just repurposed in a better, more advanced way, but it's still an Oculus, it's still a drone, it's still a fighter jet.
Mm-hmm.
I really like how they did this in the movie.
Well, rather than coming up with a technology that's completely different from anything we've got, they've extrapolated and they've said, what will it look like in the future? What possible improvements could there be? Time travel, flying into space in a fighter jet, all these sorts of things that we can't do now for obvious reasons. Like Elon Musk must have really done some pretty big work in his rocketry to get a plane that can get into orbit on, whatever fuel system or power system it's using.
Oh, Richard Branson did that too. Richard Branson actually created a plane that can fly out of orbit. It doesn't take you to the moon, but you can get out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, these lots of people look at technology and go, "Isn't that cool?" But they don't think about how we got there. All the iterations before that, all the miniaturizations and the improvements in materials and power systems and all that sort of thing that goes into it to actually get to the super sci-fi high-tech world that we all probably will die before we get to. But anyway,
Yeah, most likely.
us poor old farts. But we've been dreaming about this since we were kids, so it's all good fun.
Yeah.
So a couple of other points in this segment that I want to run across quickly, and these are actually poking holes in the science of the movie, because it's like, what the fuck were you thinking? This whole system whereby, he's been shot in the side, therefore his DNA is corrupted, therefore the plane won't recognize him. What the hell? Do you understand how DNA works? I'm sorry. Every cell in your body has a copy of your DNA, a complete copy. Any cell in your body holds the possibility, the somatic cells in your body hold the possibility of an entire person being recreated. That's what cloning is all about. So therefore, even if you've got a hole in your side and blood's pissing out of you, the rest of the DNA in your body is just fine, sorry. So that whole theory is completely kaput.
Let me correct you there. It's farting out of you.
Okay, fine.
So even the methane that you're farting has your DNA on it?
No, the wound was
Bits of it,
farting.
at least.
Oh.
The bullet hole was farting.
When he coughed, the bullet hole farted, which wasn't good. It means that the hole punctured his abdominal space. So when his diaphragm expanded, it pushed air out of the hole.
Yeah, that's not good.
And in fact, he was in big danger of septicemia, so he probably should have been in the hospital. But anyway,
there's another non-possible thing right there.
Exactly, skipping way across that gap. Yeah, the whole. Now, if that thing that was hanging around his neck was a life monitor and monitors his vitals and said you are not fit enough to pilot, therefore I won't activate, then that would make a whole lot more sense than saying his DNA was damaged and therefore he couldn't pilot the plane. However, it was just a convenience to get the need for the kid to be there. It was a writing laziness on the part of the writers. It was one of the two places where I felt the writers really fell down in their efforts. Otherwise, it was a good story, but in that particular instance, basically that whole thing existed within the story to make sure that 12-year-old Adam had to be there, had to go up into the plane so he could go, ooh, wow, I want to fly this too. Ooh, I want to be like you when I grow up because this plane is really cool. It was that moment.
He's got all wowed.
Yeah, well, he didn't think much of his older self, but he liked the shit that he stole. So,
Borrowed.
yeah, I stole this. No, you borrowed it. But basically, yeah, that makes no sense because if he hadn't gone back in time to where his younger self was, there was no way he could enter the plane and get it into self-repair mode because he was injured. And if he couldn't get back and there was no help, he would die. So basically, it had a huge logic hole in this whole, you're not allowed in the plane because you've been shot business. I thought it was really, really stupid and not well thought out. Because if you're stranded and you're hurt, there's no way to get home because the plane won't let you in. Bye-bye, you're dead. You can't even get in the plane to get the med kit because it won't let you in.
That's some of the points. Some of the points that we mentioned earlier, that the movie was not really like hard on science. To be honest, they didn't put hard work on it, and to be honest, it's not like it was necessary for the movie to be a success. But it's a fact that
I call it lazy writing. Basically, we want this thing to happen. We don't want to think too hard about why, so we'll say this. But they really just, as a writer myself, internal logic within the world is really important to me. It has to make sense. If it doesn't make sense, it breaks me out of the immersion. And you spend more time going, what the fuck, than you do concentrating on what's happening in the story. If they just worked a little harder on that, I think it would have brought the movie up a bit more and there probably would have been better reviews. So writer's room, think about it a bit harder. And speaking of thinking about it a bit harder, there's one scene in that movie that was a complete what the fuck is wrong with you people moment for me, and that was the bullet.
Look, I am not a giant science guy, and when they're walking into this Hadron Collider place, and I see it looks just like a fucking little campus, and I'm like, what?
It was a particle accelerator.
Yeah, but I mean,
it wasn't a collider.
Oh, okay.
But a particle accelerator, could it be so much smaller than a Hadron Collider?
Well, you guys obviously haven't seen the latest Ghostbusters movie, but basically that circular bit on the backpack in the Ghostbusters,
it's a particle accelerator.
It's a particle accelerator,
Right.
and it's this big, and it's actually a scene in the movie where she goes, "How the hell did my grandfather make a particle accelerator this small?" Oh yeah, it was my grandfather. He's a genius. Okay,
that's me.
And he did it in the 80s.
Oh my god. Well, they'll go further. The guy from Back to the Future, the doctor, he made a flying train.
Yeah.
In the 1800s?
In the 1800s. That's how Wild West was written.
He didn't make a flying train in the 1800s. He made a train that could go into the future, and then he had a hover conversion put on the train in 2015.
Oh, yeah. Forgot about that.
Yeah.
Facts.
Mm-hmm. So, you remember it? You remember it was in the news. Train arrives in 2015, gets hover conversion. I remember it on the news. Hang on, different timeline. Sorry.
It was a different, multiverse. That's why we can't remember.
I think that it was bigger news when the Nikes came out that they were on Back to the Future movie.
Yeah.
I remember that actually. Yeah, they tried to. They didn't take off, much like
Nah.
the flying car. But anyway,
we have hovering skateboards right now. Just
oh
so you
yeah,
know.
but you've got to have a copper floor which is running as a superconductor. So yeah, it's not easy to do. It won't run around on the street. Put it that way.
And no, there's one that runs in the street, just doesn't go very high. It goes like a couple of inches above the ground, and you cannot move higher
That's
than that.
using. I think that's using something super freezing. I think I saw something like
Yeah,
that. And
something like
Yeah,
that.
superconductors have to be at a very cold temperature to superconduct. It's one of those physics things where the closer you get to absolute zero, physical attributes of things change. So physics as we know it is based around, like 18 degrees C or whatever, 54 degrees or something Fahrenheit.
good luck
Whereas,
using it in Florida.
yeah. But yeah, superconductors generally have to be at really, really cold temperatures to get the effect to work. You're taking a lot of energy out of the system to get that effect.
Yeah.
But let me get back to the bullet, because the bullet is utter bullshit. Okay, so Newton's law
That's been bothering
about...
me the whole time.
Oh, I saw that bullet and I went, the fuck you did that.
And you love it more when they're like, "How do you know about the bullet?" Oh, because she doesn't understand about science.
Look, you've got
science.
Newton's law about an object affected by a force will continue on in the same direction until acted on by another force. Everybody knows about that one, right? So, and gravity and things like that. Gravity is quite weak. Magnetic forces can be quite strong. But the problem is that it was very selective. So, not mentioning that there's a whole clip of these rounds in that gun, which should have meant that she was having trouble aiming the gun because it was being pulled out of her hand, but she's standing there aiming it like it's nothing. The bullet comes out of the gun. Suddenly, the magnetic force goes, oh, hang on, there's some iron that I can attract, because it was ignoring it because it was in this gun.
Don't go further. Don't go further. It was pulling all the soldiers in, right?
Mm-hmm.
The kid had the drone kid in his hands and his face, and he was standing there, and he was not pulled off anywhere.
It's possible it had no ferrous metal in it. It's possible, but they stated these bullets had a magnetic ferrous core, right? Why it was magnetic, ferrous iron is affected by magnetism. It doesn't have to be a magnetic ferrous core, just a ferrous core, right?
Oh, I think
but she's got a clip of these bullets
for dumb people like me.
Yeah, ferrous means iron, right? A type of iron, because there's multiple types of iron, but we won't get into that because that's
no. That's what I'm saying. It's pretty scientific wording for stupid people like me to be like, oh wow, science.
Ferrous means iron or iron based. Iron being the metal. So she's got a clip of these bullets in the gun. The whole gun should have been pulled in.
Yes.
Before the bullet even got fired. But once a bullet got fired, the bullet goes, ooh, right? Now, it's got a force of the explosive pushing it this way, right? There was nothing going in the opposite direction that would have stopped its forward momentum. So what it should have done, and they really should have had a physicist on staff to advise them on this, what it should have done was come out of the gun, headed towards the guy, and then deviated towards the magnet, but not just turned and run straight at it. It should have deviated. It should have gone around the whole thing, doing a spiral inwards. It should have gone around the whole thing and came back and hit her, gone in one ear and out the other. That would have been cool. I would have gone, yeah. That would have been proper science.
I have more to add that just proof is just more wrong. The whole freaking magazine that is loaded into the gun should have pulled her hand completely off of it.
I've said that twice already.
Yeah.
So, dude, listen to what I'm saying. I've said that twice already.
The gun should have been in their hands.
Robert, he's not listening. But if they've done the slow-mo, the bullet coming out and heading towards him, and you think, oh shit, he's going to die, and then it deviates, and then it does a spiral, inward spiral around, and hits the younger version of Soren and goes in one ear, and you see her eyes go red as the blood splatters on the inside of her eyes, and then comes out her other ear, and then she goes.
We just need to play.
That would
We need to play Gears of War. That's what
That's
you need.
science.
That's what you need, man.
that
That's
would have been
science.
scientifically
We need to
accurate,
play
or at
Gears of
least
War.
plausible.
And then take the older Adam to the hospital
Mhm.
because he's gonna stop breathing pretty soon
Yeah.
with a farting moon.
Yeah, he should have been hospitalized for like weeks. But anyway. Okay, I'm finished ragging on the science. We're done.
No, I do agree with you. I mean, and don't for all your listeners, don't get us wrong. The movie was fun to watch. It's just that we have to point out those things that just like Ray says, like those WTF moments in the movie. Um,
Oh, I was just going to say, if instead of standing parallel to the magnetism, if she had been standing, pointing the gun away from it, at them standing near the door, right? So if they were over near the door, and she was between them and the magnet, but off to the side a little bit, and the bullet fired away from the magnet, it would have decelerated. It wouldn't have curved. It would have decelerated and then flipped back and gone over her shoulder and killed her younger self. That would have been scientifically accurate, because as it comes out of the gun, well, presuming that the gun doesn't just pull her
yes.
entirely into the
So
thing,
we're rotating as it goes forward.
The bullet leaving the gun, and presuming that it was able to, maybe there was a magnetic clip that counteracted the magnetic force on it or something like that. I don't know. But the bullet leaves the gun, it will start decelerating straight away because the magnet's pulling it back this way. So it goes towards him, it decelerates to zero, and then it goes back over her shoulder and kills her younger self. That would have worked. I would have been okay with that.
But what would have been
But
the
because
distance?
because it was sideways and the thing just pulled up, did a flip sideways and then went in, that was just bullshit.
What would
That
have
was
been the
just-
distance? Because we're not even talking about like the force of the pull that would have made that bullet require X distance to stop or detour.
my personal opinion would have been 20 or 30 meters, which is 60
So everybody, yeah, he would have actually shot the person that she meant to shoot,
yeah, but quite likely.
and then shoot herself back.
It depends on the load of the cartridge. If the cartridge wasn't designed for high penetration, it was just anti floppy person rounds, then it wouldn't necessarily have had that much of an explosive charge. But you're getting into ballistics here, and I don't know a huge amount about it.
Yeah.
So I won't comment. But yeah, basically they screwed the pooch. Something shocking on that one.
Awesome.
And coming from Hulk, I'm disappointed.
The way that he pulled out, she like implying that she didn't know the science, so he kind of moved back and waited for that to happen.
Yeah, maybe that was a tongue-in-cheek reference of this is bullshit and we know it.
No,
you just don't know the
that is-
science.
That is a fact. That is a fact.
We can always say that this is like it was done on purpose to imply this movie is not hard science. I don't know. I'm just
No, that is factual. The movie's not hard science.
Yes,
It's factual.
Yes,
but from my perspective, they could have made it 100 times cooler if the bullet had spun around the entire thing and hit.
There's a movie about that already.
Which
Wanted, I think it's called, isn't it?
Oh yeah, but they didn't use
where they go and they go like
particle accelerator.
It's like playing baseball with guns.
Yeah. That's actually worse.
Putting spin on the bullet. Rifling does that anyway. But
I'll tell you, and I still have not watched it. That's how bad I think that movie must be. I have not watched it.
If we reviewed that movie, I would spend almost as much time ragging on the physics of that movie as I do on this one.
No, I value my time too much. It's just like watching Sharknado, which I actually cannot believe to this day that Robert suggested we should talk about that movie.
Well,
to be fair, I haven't watched it yet.
I haven't watched Sharknado, but there are records of waterspouts picking up fish and frogs out of wetlands and things like that and depositing them on people. It has actually happened. I don't know about whole sharks. I'm talking about fish and frogs. I'm not talking
Yeah.
about sharks.
Yeah,
Yeah,
shark.
we're talking about Sharknadoes.
Yeah, Twist in the movie Twister.
I
One of those
almost
That's right.
twisters picked up a cow.
I
And
just
a
love you
shark.
too much, Robert. So I did not suggest we should take your science fiction card away and take away forever the chance for you to
Well,
actually
Well,
renew it.
you should take solace in the fact that I have not watched any of those movies, nor do I feel like I want to. So
we could start a whole nother
You
podcast called
suggested to talk about it
Science
and watch
Fantasy
it.
Remnant. Now, look,
there was a
we just
reason
started.
why I posted it, but
Yeah, movie's
we
so
can talk off
bad.
camera from that.
We just started another podcast called Science Fantasy Remnant and do those movies.
There you
Well,
go.
I actually had told Robert there's a lot of fantasy material that we both love that I would love like to just make episodes about them.
Yeah, I feel the same way about a lot of anime that aren't scientific but are really awesome. So,
That way we can talk about mana and all that stuff.
Nice. Okay, so this is it for this episode for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I am super happy that we went back to our origins in this episode, and we went and talked all over this movie from beginning to end to middle, and did exactly what they did in season one. So I hope you guys liked it. If you like what we did on this episode, let us know.
And if you
Um,
don't like, talk to me. I like to. I'm feisty.
yeah, send all your hate mails to Giancarlo. He'll receive them.
Please,
he'll
please.
take you on.
I blow vape
Awesome.
on your face.
Send all your cool science facts to Ray.
Yeah, and all
I
your
collect
happy
them.
endings to me. So
Yeah, sounds like a plan.
Okay, so thank you everybody for coming back again, and I hope to see you guys in future episodes.
Bye for now.
Okay.